Variations of cylinders are often found in nature, and tree branches are a good example of this. But if we want to draw tree branches, how do we make those tree branches look round? Well, if we think of a cylinder for a minute, we know that if we create a striped pattern and wrap it around that cylinder, we can use that as a device to create the illusion that that cylinder is round. So if we start off with broad stripes around the center of the cylinder, and we gradually compress those stripes, in this case compress them horizontally, as those stripes move to one or the other side of that cylinder, and if we do that in a regular fashion, we can make that cylinder very effectively volumetric. Now, of course, tree branches don't generally have stripes on them like that, but they do have usually some kind of pattern on them. So I've taken a tube and I've drawn sort of a tree barkish pattern on the tube, and it functions in many ways like the stripes on the cylinder, because as this pattern wraps itself around the cylinder, and as we look away from the center of that cylinder, we're going to see a horizontal compression of those pattern units as they wrap around the tube. Now, if we think of tree branches that are not always straight up and down like this, they tilt in various ways, but they also break out of that plane, and they can move away from us or toward us. And so this pattern is going to compress when that happens. So if I tilt the cylinder like that, we're going to get a vertical compression of those pattern units. So if you're looking around the center of the tree branch, what you saw initially like this is going to vertically compress. And that pattern is also going to horizontally compress as we move to the sides. So in the case of a foreshortened branch like this, you're going to get both vertical and horizontal compression. So taking a look at these patterns that I've drawn in the rectangles and the squares, those patterns are essentially a stylization of tree bark, and this could be what tree bark would look like if it was on a flat surface. If that surface tilts away from you in the same way that the cylinder would be tilting away from you in terms of the sides moving away, if those planes tilt away from you, there's going to be a horizontal compression. If the cylinder were to be tilted as if it was foreshortened, there's going to be a vertical compression of that pattern unit. And if you follow the pattern around the edge of the cylinder, it's going to both compress vertically and horizontally. So this is all kind of complicated, but if you approach this intuitively, keeping in mind that pattern units will compress as they move around cylindrical objects, and they'll compress in the other direction if that cylinder is foreshortened. If you keep this in mind, you could approach the drawing of tree branches. Now, I'm not saying that it's a great idea every time you draw tree branches to painstakingly draw out cylinders and to use this technical means to keep you on track, because that would be very tedious and time consuming. But what I am saying is that if you think always about cylinders when you're drawing tree branches, and not only would you be thinking about pattern units compressing as they wrap around the form of the branch, but also you'd be thinking about what orientation that branch is and how foreshortened it is relative to you. You can more or less intuitively use tree bark pattern in order to achieve the illusion of roundness and also to create convincing foreshortening effects. So I'm going to use these cylindrical diagrams as a visual cue to help keep me on track when I'm intuitively drawing that tree bark pattern. And my objective is to create convincing tree branches that are both round and moving in and out of space. So let's see if this works.